Welcome to the Science of Adventure podcast, to the first official episode of the Science of Adventure podcast. It's very exciting to be here, so thank you all for lending me your ears. I hope you enjoy the content to come. Now, what I want to do in this first one is just give a bit more of an introduction to who the heck I am. Who is the person that's going to be gesticulating all over the place and then yelling at you down the microphone and down the computer or down your screen at you over the coming episodes. Now, my name's Ben. I'm the Adventure Coach. I run an adventure coaching business to help people bring about their best selves. I want to see a world full of people who feel competent, confident, and clear on how to affect positive and adventurous change in their life. I want to live in that world. That's what I want to do, because I want to help you, empower you, and feel empowered to live your most adventurous life. That's what I want to do. Now, as a little bit of history, I used to be in the army. Before the army, I worked as a chef. It's kind of a loose term chef, more like a cook. It was in a pub with lots of microwaves. It was a very unfortunate place to work, but it was necessary when I was 17, 18 years old. I then joined the army. I was an intelligence analyst for 7 years, but I did far more adventure training than I did my actual job. Deployed to Afghanistan, did some really interesting roles and responsibilities in the army of varying degrees. There's a fun story in there somewhere, but spent a lot of my time doing adventure training. Of that adventure training, that was qualifications, so winter and summer mountain leaders. I did my rock climbing instructor, multi-pitch rock climbing instructor. The army have a large variety of different qualifications and bits and pieces. I did a lot of them, especially in the mountain setting. I was also a sea kayaking guide, a open canoe guide, and a failed whitewater kayaker because I was useless at whitewater kayaking, to be quite honest. I could never go over rapids without nearly drowning. And that then led on to doing a lot of expeditions around the world. Very, very cool thing to do. Very, very cool. I feel incredibly lucky to have done that. Going up to 7,200 meters in the Nepali Himalayas, going to South Africa, going to the Alps, Tajikistan. When I say the Alps, I'm talking France, Switzerland, Austria. Did some stuff in Bavaria, been to Norway, been to the jungle, been to America. It's been amazing. A really, really, really cool journey. And a journey in the mountains that is certainly not over yet. There is so much more to do and so much more to experience, but I just feel like I'm in a much more lucky environment right now. Now, during that time as an adventure training instructor, I learned an awful lot of things. I learned how people need to grow and develop in order to become more capable to go and do their mountain adventures. It's not necessarily a case of just turning up and giving it a go. That gets you somewhere. It does, absolutely. But if you want to progress, if you want to get better, there needs to be elements of training. And I thought, well, I need to train then. And actually, I started training for the Special Forces. I was going through Special Forces selection at the time. I had 3 attempts, none of which were successful, I will admit. I got, in varying degrees, far enough through each one of the courses, but there was one where I was 20 years old, very, very, very much young in the head. I was an immature 20-year-old. The next one was an injury, and the next one, quite frankly, after 3 years trying to do the same thing, I was completely exhausted with what it is I was doing. And I realised I actually only wanted to be there because I wanted to be absolutely thrashed along the hills by people that I actually respected, which was an interesting and eye-opening experience for me because I was quite an egotistical soldier and needed to just continually be better and beat people. But actually, I figured out that I just wanted to get beasted around the hills lots, and I loved it, and it was by people that I respected. And then I learned why I respected them, and I learned about my own core values, which I hadn't spent a lot of time fully understanding or giving some time appreciation to. So it was a very eye-opening experience. But that also kind of sealed the deal for me leaving the army. That was kind of started the thought process of, I think I'm done now. I think I need to move on to do my own thing. Got my personal trainer qualifications, was a PTI in the army. So with all of the adventure training stuff, I thought, great, that's good to go. I'll start doing some challenges. Now, while I was training for selection, I did some ultramarathons of between 50 kilometers and 80 miles was the longest one, with a 25 kilo rucksack. Sometimes I took my husky dogs, sometimes I didn't. And did 5 of them in 1 year. And I thought, I did the first one and I was like, that was really bloody hard. I was like, it's good fun though. And the company asked me back again. They were like, hey, you want to come back? It's quite cool. It's a bit of a novelty to have a moron like you doing this in a massive rucksack. And then I did it again, and then I'd started not coming last. And I was like, this is interesting. And then I did it again, didn't come last. And I was like, this is interesting. So I thought maybe I should go and do a running race. So did the Glencoe Skyline, which for those who don't know, is a very tough day out in the Glencoe Mountains. You start in Kinlochleven and you are going up pretty much straight away. You're going up Curve Ridge of the Buchel, which is quite an imposing ridge. up and down lots and lots of hills, up onto the Bajan Massif, down, up over the Anakiga, which is the narrowest ridge in the UK. It's a long day out. It was a tough day out, and I've got some super, super fond memories from that experience. One of which was I was sat on the only feed station that was like stocked with food. There were a couple of check-ins and things, but the only feed station was I think it was like kilometre 30 of 38, I think, something like that. And it was right at the bottom of Glencoe. So you come down off Bajan Nambian, big mountain, you come down, and then you've got to go up, literally 900 metres solid up, to the top of the Anakiga, ready to go and do the ridge. And that is the place where they have the minibuses, that's where they got the food, that's where they got the safety station. It catches a lot of people out. And you can see it in people's eyes, and they'll sit down, and they'll look at the bus, and they'll go, I'm out, I'm done. Because it's too tempting, because they look up at the 900 metre ascent, and they're like, I ain't got that in my legs. And I remember, clear as day, I was sat there, I had a massive handful of saurine and a massive handful of salt and vinegar crisps, and I was devouring them, looking like a bit of a rabid animal. And my mum messaged me, because my mum and my brother were watching me on dot watching, and they said, you've been still for a little while, just checking in, you are 111th place, keep going, you're doing incredibly well. And I looked at it and was like, oh God, I'm so tired, but 111th. I reckon if I could finish in the top 100, how amazing would that be? You know, for the first race that I've properly run, how amazing would that be? Do you know what? I'll give that a go. Got my handful of saurine, cracked on up this hill, got overtaken by an awful lot of people. It was so tough. Got to the top, completely exhausted. Sat down for a minute. I was like, hang on a minute. I'm in a world of hurt here. And I thought I'll approach the Anakiga, which I'll admit, to that date, I hadn't done the Anakiga before. And I kind of had to lie about it a little bit to say that I had. But I hadn't done it before. And I'm like, oh, God, right, okay, I'll see what this ridge has got in for me. But steep technical terrain like that, that's my jam. That's my bag. That's my favourite type of terrain. And I was like, I got this. I can move pretty fast over this. And I felt all right. You know, I wasn't going up anymore, so I felt okay. I was like, let's go. So I started overtaking an awful lot of people, getting past things, not hesitating on some of this more technical stuff, and just kept going and going and going. It was great. Something happened to me, and I went into this beastly part of my head, which I loved. It was just fantastic. I was grunting to myself, and I was just grumbling at myself and breathing hard and just running and passing people. I don't remember who I passed, but I was passing people, and I had to charge down this hill. And I had a friend of mine who worked at the ice factory at the time. He was working a check marker when we meet up onto the path where the West Highland Way goes, and then it's a couple of K back in down the gravel. Apparently I passed him. I didn't even notice him, but he said to me afterwards, like, are you okay? Because, you know, you passed me and you were just grunting at yourself and growling at yourself. And I'm like, yeah, I was all right. Felt okay. I felt strong. And then I saw someone in front of me quite off in the distance, and I was like, I'll catch that person. That will be my marker. And I kept pushing, and this guy, fair play, he put up a fight. I couldn't catch him for a very long time. And I saw his Canadian flag, and I was like, right, I'm on him. Let's go. Come on. Keep pushing. My legs were dead. Keep pushing. I had no fuel. Keep pushing. I was wiped. Keep pushing. And then I hope I can communicate this well. But when I could hear the crowds at the Ice Factor, I could hear all the cheering. I could hear all of the whistles and the bells and all the things that people were making noise with. I could hear the music. And so my legs just felt lighter. The hair standing up on end. I felt like a celebrity. I wasn't. Nobody cares who I was. But it just felt amazing. And I had this like overwhelming sense of euphoria. I had a few tears in my eyes because it was a really hard day. And I just had this massive smile on my face. And I just sped up. And I got past this guy. And I don't remember anything else until I got to the crowds. And then you've got a solid, if not 200 metres to go around the building, just swarmed with crowds. And it was just the most amazing experience. Hair standing up on end. I was exhausted. It took me a solid 12 hours, I think it was in the end, to complete this race. It was such a long day. But to this day, there aren't many times where I felt so proud of what I've achieved in one day. It was amazing. And my brother, he messaged me saying, oh, I'm proud of you, mate. I can't believe you completed that. And me and my brothers, we don't really have that kind of chat. And I was like, oh my God. And I had some tears in my eyes, and I had some chili sort of thrown at me and just had to eat it. And then I just felt absolutely amazing. And I thought, I wonder what else I can do. So that night I went back to the car. I was sleeping in the car that night. It was such a terrible idea. I slept in the car with my legs being in the most agony. Not the most agony, I'll tell you about that next, but in agony. And had to drive back from Scotland to England the next day, which was a long drive back to Wiltshire, but necessary. And it was a wonderful, wonderful race. Because after that I thought, well, I wonder what else I could do. And the next challenge had already come to me. I was having a chat with Ross Edgley, who holds the record for the world's longest rope climb. I was like, I really fancy rope climbing. It looks like a really fun thing, and I like doing it. It's a movement we do a lot in army training. I was like, I want to do it, but I don't necessarily just want to repeat, the world's longest rope climb and climb the height of Everest. Like, I want to do something different. I don't just want to I had this weird complex that I felt like I was copying people, and I thought, how about we do the 3 Peaks challenge? But we take the height of the 3 peaks and we climb that cumulative height, which is, I think, something like 111,000 feet and change, or something like that. Yeah, something like that. Maybe 11,000 feet, not 111,000 feet. My maths isn't doing very well at the moment, but let's say it's 11,000 feet. That sounds a little bit more realistic, doesn't it? 111,000 feet. Up and down a 20-foot gym rope. How many times have we got to do that? Well, I actually differentiated between, I had the start bit was actually on a 15-foot and then I went on to a 20-foot. So it was 731 times that I had to climb that rope. I was like, I wonder, right, what can I do? Well, Ross Edgley did roughly half that distance. He did roughly double that distance, in 24 hours. So maybe I can do half the distance in half the time. Seems a bit fair. 12 hours to do the 3 Peaks challenge. Well, technically speaking, if you're doing the National 3 Peaks Challenge, which is Ben Nevis, Scarfell and Snowdon, you're kind of allowing for 11 hours of driving anyway. So 12 hours seems reasonable. That seems like, I think we've got the bones of a challenge here. And let's raise £1,000 for each of the mountain rescue teams of the mountains. So for Lochaber, and then for Wasdale, and then for Llanberis. Let's raise £1,000 for each of those. So let's go. We got to work. We raised the money, and after 10 weeks of training, I was good to go. And let me tell you, the training for that was a masterclass in specificity, because at that point, I really didn't know a lot about training. I was still learning. I was still being hugely naive. The reason I name dropped Ross Edgley is because he helped me a lot with the how to train from his experience of doing uber long distance rope climbing, and I learned an awful lot. There was no training that was wasted. There wasn't any space for the bicep curls and the gym muscles. It was literally sled pulls, rope climbs, pull-ups, squats of varying degrees in varying ways that matched exactly the rope climb for that amount of time. I had my own rope. I would take it from my room in the army and barracks. I'd lash it then to a fire exit on the side of the cookhouse, drop the rope down 20 foot at 3 o'clock in the morning. I would do 5 hours of rope climbs, and then I'd go have breakfast and go to work. That was legit how I trained. And I got to what was a hugely tough day. And the 3 Peaks rope climb started, crack of dawn in the morning, at the Ice Factor in Scotland. They set me up on the indoor climbing wall. We hit we hooked the rope up from the ceiling, and off we go. Cue some music, get my headphones in, got some food out, got some drink out, got some company. We were good to go. And I got to 400 reps of 731. And I cannot express how hard it was to get to 500. It got to the point where the reason I had to change the distance from 20 feet down to 15 feet is because I was getting to the top and just letting go, dropping onto a crash mat, standing up and going again, because it was just so hard. I was so tired. I was broken. And I was like, I feel exhausted. And I slumped down. And I got to 499. I got to 500. And I slumped down. And Fiona, who worked at the Ice Factory at the time, she picked my head up with her hands. She looked at me and she was like, what do you need? And I'm just like delirious. I was like, I need chips. I need cheesy chips with ketchup. I need a cheese and ham toastie. I need specifically a salted caramel fridge brownie milkshake from the Co-op. I need ice cream, and I can't remember. I said something else and I can't quite remember what it was. And bless her, she brought a chicken goujons. That was it, and chicken goujons. And she brought it all to me, and I just devoured it on the floor like some sort of rabid animal, and cracked on. And then had this new burst of energy. Again, I knew nothing about nutrition at this point. This is 2018. I knew very, very little. I was still following a Jim Stepani nutrition plan at the time. It was awful. So I learned, and I got to the challenge. And then I ticked off 731 reps of a rope in 11 hours, 41 minutes, and then had a pint of Guinness. But even then got to the end of that challenge and was like, that's incredible. The next day, I've never ached so much in my entire life. Every single sinew of muscle from fingertip to toe tip hurt. Everything hurt. I've never known anything like it. Everything hurt. I could not get myself out of bed. I literally had to get bent up to get out of bed and pulled around and stood up because I could not do it myself. It was awful. And then after that, it was like, well, what else can I do? And that was where the 16 marathons in 16 days and 16 national parks challenge was born. You know, the London National Park City was due to be announced back in 2019, I think it was, and I thought that's a really interesting thing. I'll look into it. I'll figure out who's doing that. What's that all about? Let's understand that. I like the idea that they're promoting, you know, looking after the green spaces in our cities. So I'll run a marathon in every single national park all the way around the UK, and I'll end at the London National Park City for launch day. And I'll come to launch day and it'd be cool to see it. And they took it one step further. They said, well, hey, we'll develop your marathon route in London so that it takes in loads of trails and green spaces just to prove our concept. And you can do a speaking engagement for us at the launch if you like. I'm like, great, like getting into speaking, that sounds fantastic. Let's do that. That was a tough challenge. That was a real tough challenge. Degradation of knees and cartilage and just general pain. That was awful. And I was driving my van in between each marathon, you know, with a frying pan full of food that I cooked in the back because I decided for some silly reasons to do the entire challenge on an entirely plant-based diet. And I didn't know anything about nutrition at the time. I was learning more and more things just being in the trenches, and I thought I was in the bias that the plant-based diet is the healthiest of all diets. It's not, by the way. That it's the best for endurance. It's not, by the way. I was like, well, that's the dichotomy of the internet. That's the bias that people are throwing on me. So, do you know what? I'll try it and I'll find out myself. Malnourished, lost a lot of weight, didn't do very well, but I did complete the challenge. Did the speaking at London National Park City. It was just wonderful, absolutely wonderful. We have some beautiful, beautiful places here in the UK. I was like, well, what's the next challenge? And, well, on to the next challenge. 3,500 kilometres solo bikepacking around Iceland. Anywhere between 150 and 260 kilometres per day, every single day for 28 days, back to back to back to back to back, all the way around Iceland. Circumnavigating the entire country, going right into the Central Highlands, trying to create a new route to explore more. And that was one of the best experiences of my entire life. And I want to tell you this one story. And I appreciate you being here listening to this. I hope you're enjoying all these different stories. The rest of the podcast will be, you know, more sort of information and implementation and actual skills and stuff for you to learn. But I just want to tell you a story. I was on the West Fjords of Iceland. If you look at the map of Iceland, it's like the finger bit that comes out the northwest part of all the fjords that go in and out. And I genuinely thought, as I was planning this, that will be the most soul-destroying area because you're going in for miles. And you can see the other side of the water, the road that you've got to take to come back out again. I thought it's going to be soul-destroying. This will be the worst part. And it turns out that every single one of those fjords just had its own personality. Now, it was also, bearing in mind I'm 50 miles south of the Arctic Circle here, it was like 30-degree heat. It was hot in the sun. I was getting a tan. Like, it was a hot day. And I'm going in and out all these fjords. And was going to stay in a hotel this one night, actually. Because I did like 2 or 3 nights in a hotel all around just to kind of wash and just reset a wee bit. And I went to this hotel, and it was a hotel that was like geothermally heated, but it was boiling. It legit was about 35, 38 degrees inside this hotel. It was so hot. I was like, there's no way I can stay here. So I just cracked on anyway. Cycled a bit more, went down the next fjord, and I was like, I don't really know where I'm going. You know, I know the next town is still quite a long way away, so I might just have to camp somewhere. I'll find somewhere. There's no campsite, so I'll just kind of wild camp somewhere. And I was tired, and, you know, I was down on the drops on my bike, and my head was lolling around all over the place. I was just sleepy. I was tired, and I'd had enough for the day. And then I heard this sound, this big sound next to me. And I'm right on the water's edge, on the road, cycling away. And no joke, within 30 or 40 metres to my left were a pod of humpback whales, all breaching out of the water. And that sound was blowholes. And then you could hear the inhale of a blowhole, which I've never heard before. You know, you hear the and then you hear the which I just thought was insane because it genuinely sounded like guttering, like an inhale through a long gutter pipe. That's kind of what it sounded like, if you can imagine that. And I'm just staring as I'm cycling along. I'm staring to my left, just thinking this is absolutely incredible. There's no one around for miles. I hadn't seen a car in hours, and I had this pod of humpback whales that were following me parallel for miles. We literally did kilometers. We did kilometers together, and it was incredible. And I just wanted to grab my phone and film it, but I knew that if I stopped, they would go, because clearly they're not following me. It just so happens that it's coincidence that we're going in the same direction. And I just felt that there was something, even though I was pretty tired and I just had it with the day, and I was a little bit, I guess a little lonely as well, but also a little bit fed up that the hotel didn't work and like the plan wasn't going to plan. But that's okay. That's what adventure's all about. And all of a sudden it was like Iceland was telling me to keep going more, just to keep pushing forward. Do you know what? Let's send this guy some humpback whales. That'll jazz him up. And I thought, that is just incredible. And for about 5 kilometers, I had humpback whales breaching beside me on this road for the single most incredible experience of my entire life. It was amazing. And only made possible because I embraced a bit of an adventure mindset, which I've come to understand is the main message that I'm bringing onto people. Because after Iceland, there was the move to Scotland. I lived in my car for 6 months. I lived in a van for 9 months. I lived in an eccentric millionaire's mansion for 9 months. I had the most wonderful time cruising around Scotland doing cool things and just generally finding myself, quote unquote, basically having my gap year, but having that gap year at 26, 27 years old. Having the most amazing experience. And now in my pursuit of mountain sky running up steep mountains, technical terrain, mountain biking, going down big, steep trails, enduro mountain biking and mountain sky running are now my thing. And that's on to the next challenges going forward. So that's a bit of an introduction to who the heck I am. I've got a bunch of experience in challenges. I'm an MNU certified evidence-based nutritionist. I'm a level 4 personal trainer. I am a certified cognitive behavioral therapist practitioner. I am here to help you go forward. With all of my qualifications in mountain leading and rock climbing instructing and everything else, I am here to help apply an adventure mindset to your life and help you exercise that adventure mindset out there in the wild, doing adventurous things which you and I vibe with. Because I know that if you can embrace that and you can build and forge resilience and physical robustness and confidence and competence throughout that, you are going to live as your healthiest, your happiest, your fittest and your strongest version of you. And that's going to apply not just on the mountainside, but in the office, at home with your family, with everything else that life throws at you. You are going to be better armed to be able to deal with it. And that is what I am most passionate about. So welcome to the Science and Adventure Podcast. We're going to dive into all these things: nutrition, fitness, mindset, and adventure. We're going to dive into the evidence of each one. I want to leave you with information and actionable implementation points for you to be able to take away after each and every single episode, so that we can progress forward together. And yes, I'll be plugging my coaching services, my Adventure Readiness Challenge, and other products and bits and pieces that I have. We're not doing adverts, we're not doing promotions. I'm just going to tell you what I do and how I can help you. So team, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for lending me your ears. And I'll see you next time. Peace.